tape recorders, film strips, 8mm movie projectors, television, and computers. These are all recent technologies that have somehow, some way, found their way into today's schools. Good evening and welcome to a special live call-in program called Technology in Our Schools. I'm your host, Adam Ariton. Tonight we will inform you of new technological developments in two major areas. First, we will discuss Cherry Hill West's new computer laboratory, an interactive computer laboratory, using an AT&T Unix-based computer in conjunction with AT&T's software program, Writer's Workbench. To present us with the system's functions and its uses in education are Barbara Obriza, chairperson of the English department here at Cherry Hill West, and Chris Morley of AT&T. Good evening to you both. The second part of tonight's program deals with yet another exciting piece of technology, laser video discs. We will be examining the video discs used specifically in education and entertainment. Presenting the disc capabilities will be Mr. Jim Donatelli from Optical Data Corporation, and to discuss the video discs characteristics of interactivity in the area of social studies is Walter W. Belfield, chairman of the history department here at West. And good evening to you gentlemen as well. At this time, I would like to say hello to the viewing audience out there and remind you that tonight's program is live and that you, the home viewer, play as an important part in this program as any of the members of the panels or even me myself. So remember, at the end of the presentations, a number will be flashed on your screen for you to call in and ask questions to any number of our panelists. Now I'd like to turn the show over to Barbara Obriza and Chris Morley, who will tell us much, much more about the Writer's Workbench system.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Adam. 10 years ago, if I had been told or anyone had suggested that the English department chairperson would be on a live show featuring technology in the schools, I would not have believed it. 5 years ago, I would not have believed it, but the reality is here I am. And the reasons for my presence here on the show today have to do with the developments in computer technology. Many of our students have personal computers. They use word processing programs to prepare their papers for their classes. Many of our teachers have personal computers, which they use for their personal writing as well as for their classroom preparation. However, in addition to teachers and students using computers, many departments across the state of New Jersey also have English computer writing labs. We now have one here as of April 7th, last Thursday, in full operation at Cherry Hill High School West. However, what's unique about our program is that not only do we have 24 workstations, but we have a networking situation which is linked with AT&T's computer and their software program, Writer's Workbench. We are going to show you a tape that we filmed last Friday. The students who are composing their papers on the computers are students in my English 4 honors class. Those students are writing a paper on Petrarch's sonnets. We're going to show you the tape, I think, right now. Writer's Workbench is a computer software program developed by AT&T a number of years ago in their Bell Lab division. The program operates on a 3B2 computer, which is a Unix-based system. The English Computer Lab is a network facility linking 24 Franklin 8000 computers with the AT&T mini computer. A student is assigned a user ID and a password, which gives him access to the network. The student logs in at the login prompt with a pre-assigned identification. Then, he enters his password, which is not visible on the screen. If he logs in correctly, he will have access to the program. The purpose of the login and the password is to ensure security for the student and his paper. The next step in the process for the student is to type in his paper. The student selects from the menu Local WP, which stands for Word Processor, and that gives him access to a text editing page using the word processor program WordPerfect. Once the student's paper has been typed in, the paper is processed through the Writer's Workbench program, which analyzes his paper in some of the following areas: organization, grammar, style, development, diction, use of the verb to be, punctuation, and other areas. The teacher has the option to limit the processing of the analysis to specific areas, or to choose to let the paper be processed in all the areas. Once the paper has been processed, the student is literally given a prescription for revision. The program does not correct a student's paper, but analyzes his paper. The advantage of the program is that the program provides the student with feedback almost instantaneously. The program allows the students to make decisions regarding revision. Writer's Workbench has some limitations. It will not, for example, advise the student on the appropriateness of his textual support or on the quality of his argument. The program does, however, address mechanical and stylistic aspects of his writing and gives him that information immediately. I should like to address myself to two specific areas as a follow-up to that tape. The first question that I would like to consider is the nature of the feedback that the student gets, that prescription for revision. Of all the examples that I could give you, I'm not going to consider the examples that have to do with grammar, punctuation, spelling, or capitalization. There are many software programs on the market that do just that. This program does that plus more, and the more is what I would really like to emphasize. First of all, the student gets a printout, and in this particular case, the printout is about 10 pages. So that the printout includes not only the student's paper, but it includes the suggestions for revision that the program makes to the student. In one area, the area of abstract words, I'll give you an example of a paper that was produced today. The student wrote on Petrarch's sonnet, and in Petrarch's sonnet, Laura is the beloved, Petrarch's beloved. And Laura sometimes stands for an ideal. And in fact, the student had used the word ideal 7 times. That word ideal then was printed out under the section on abstract words, and obviously the suggestion to the student is that that word is overused, and he might consider some alternate word, if he could, in the appropriate place. Another example that I would like to suggest to you is that the printout gives information on sentence length and sentence variety and sentence types. And if you can show this, you can see that that information is very statistical. The statistical information includes average sentence length. So that if there is a paper, for example, that is 5 words, if there is, a sentence that is 5 words long, that really doesn't fulfill the requirement, which is preset in the program, that the suggested average sentence length is 17 words. The student then is reminded that this particular sentence is shorter than the average. In all cases, the student might not want to change that particular sentence because it might be short for effect. But what will happen is that he will become aware of the fact that his sentence is that short. There are some limitations to the feedback that the student gets, and I've asked Chris if he would comment on some of those limitations.
Sure. Several issues that do need to be amplified are simply that the feedback that the student can get is limited to those things that are statistically provable. After all, this is a computer. Average sentence length is an excellent example because it's something that a computer can count. However, based on valid and sound pedagogical techniques coming out of the University of Colorado, almost said California, out of the University of Colorado, these kinds of things really help to make students aware of what makes for good writing. Short sentence lengths, when used in an overabundant fashion, make for choppy writing. Sentence lengths, when blended, long and short, which would give you an average of 17 words, make for a much better flow and a much better writing. So the limitations on what kind of feedback the program gives oftentimes are linked to the style of expository writing, where something you would see in a Smithsonian magazine, for example. Oftentimes the program can be ineffective in judging journalistic writing, where short sentence lengths are at a premium. So there are major limitations because of the statistical nature of the output and the statistical nature of the feedback. But those limitations can be overcome by the creativity of the teacher using Writer's Workbench. I've seen teachers use Writer's Workbench, for example, to help students to make better poetry. In the example Barbara gave before about the use of abstract words in expository writing are probably not a good idea in abundance, but abstract words in poetry make an awful lot of sense. Clearly, what you're trying to do through tone and color and the use of abstract words is to try to suggest to your reader a thought, a feeling, and the use of abstractions there and a very high abstract word score indicates that you may be doing just that. So there are limitations, but those limitations can be overcome by a creative teacher.
The second area that I would like to address is simply to discuss with you the benefits that we see to this particular program. And before I do, I should like to emphasize that, as you could tell from what Chris said, the Writer's Workbench program does not alter a student's writing for him. It does not tell the student how to think. It does not tell the student when he has not used the appropriate support that would benefit his argument most logically. It only responds to those areas that can be statistically presented to the student. One of the benefits then is that the student is always a decision maker. He's a decision maker at all phases of the process of writing. He's a decision maker here. He is given the prescription for revision, but all the decisions are his. And I think that's the first benefit. The second benefit to the program is that the feedback is given to the student almost instantaneously. My class, by the time that particular session was finished, we could print out all of the prescriptions for revision within 15 minutes. No teacher would be able to respond to a set of class papers giving students that kind of feedback in that period of time. Educationally, the advantage, of course, is that the student will have the opportunity to respond to the suggestions instantly when it is still fresh, when the paper is still fresh in his mind. Another advantage of this program really comes from something that happened last year. Last year during the spring, we had the system here on trial. We had 3 workstations in the math computer lab. During that time, we took various classes to the math computer lab, and the classes range from high ability classes like our honors classes to basic skills classes. And in fact, this little story that I'm going to share with you now comes from our Foundations in Writing class. The students typed in their papers and got their feedbacks, and one of the areas in which there is a statement made to the student is in the area of readability. That is, the paper will analyze the grade reading ability. If it's a paper written on a 4th grade level, it will say 4th grade. If it's written on an 8th grade level, it will say 8th grade. The conclusion about the readability is based upon 3 different formulas, and in fact, the program gives you the responses according to these different formulas. In any case, one of the students was told by the computer that his paper was written at a 4th grade level. He got very, very angry, and the result of that was he decided that he would beat the computer, that he was not going to have a computer insult him by telling him that he was writing at such a juvenile level, because after all, he was a high school student. So that the program in that particular case acted as a motivator in another kind of way that I think only computers can do. That doesn't mean that motivation doesn't come from other areas, but I think that this program can function in that area. Another way in which this program works is in consciousness raising. One of my own students has difficulty in her writing with passive voice, and this program identifies percentage of passive voice verbs. The student on the first printout was appalled, even though I certainly had indicated that on her papers, and she knew that herself, that she tended to lapse into passive voice to the point of ineffectiveness. When she read the computer printout and saw the actual percentage, she became, in a sense, almost more aware of the difficulty, and her motivation then, of course, was to change that statistic, as was with the boy and his readability, to something more acceptable. Another benefit, and I think you can tell from what I've said so far, to this particular program is that for the first time, something else is telling the student what's wrong with his paper and not the teacher. And in that sense, the teacher's role shifts from critic to support person. The teacher then becomes the person who will enable the student to write a better paper and not be the one who simply criticizes the paper. So that shift in roles, I think, will help teachers focus more on the composing process, the actual thought process in writing, because they, in a sense, do not have to deal with the mechanical problems that are suggested to the student in this particular program. Another advantage of the program is that the parameters can be adjusted. For example, we talked about average sentence length. Well, if you have a class, as a teacher have a class where the average sentence length of 17 is really too high an expectation for the particular level or grade, you can actually change that statistic and lower the parameter to something that would be more reasonable for the students in that particular class. So the program is adaptable. Another advantage of the program is that the student has an opportunity to improve his paper before submitting it for a grade. In other words, in being given the opportunity for revision, he can work with the printout, work with the feedback, make the corrections, and turn in a better final product for the grade than he would have had the opportunity earlier. Now, I've listed what I think are some of the important benefits of the program, but I would like to ask Chris if he can think of any additional benefits.
Sure. When I list these additional benefits, they're going to be virtually reiteration in probably much more simplified terms of the benefits that you've outlined heretofore. Couple of issues. Computers are wonderful for quantifying things. One of the difficulties in dealing with writing is that it's often seen as something that is not quantifiable. Even from a grammar, readability, a textual standpoint, to the student, it's often seen as an extension of the student's personality. And if you don't like my writing, you don't like me. What's nice about the computer feedback is that it's strictly objective, and it's very private. That login and password that the tape showed you before, guarantee that student's writing will be seen by no one except for the student and the system administrator, if the system administrator chooses, the teacher in this case. But it guarantees a privacy and an iterative session in that the student can write, revise, rewrite, revise, and get it to a state that the objective counts on the number of passive voice verbs, the use of, I drew a blank.
That's okay. I have
Yeah.
another question.
Yeah, okay.
All right, maybe you can come back to that. I have one
Sure.
final question before we turn it back to Adam. A lot of people ask me why we need this 3B2500 computer in order to do these tasks. And I thought maybe, since you're the technical person from AT&T, and we probably should reveal at this point that Chris was also a former English teacher, so he has an unusual background. But maybe you could answer that question. Why the 3B2500?
Sure. Several issues about the 500 that are very important. The first, as highlighted in the videotape, is that the 500 allows for a networked approach. It allows all of the data to reside in a central repository that's easy for the teachers and the students to get to. The second is it provides a low-cost alternative to providing 24 or 32 copies of the software. One copy of the software is needed and it's accessible by everyone. That's true of the Writer's Workbench software, and it's also true of the WordPerfect software that was installed to help the students with their text editing and to also help the students when they want to go to a very final draft for printing off and turning in. It becomes a very low-cost alternative on a cost-per-user basis, much lower than the cost that you would see for 24 individual PCs. It also becomes a much simpler administrative task because when an upgrade of the program comes out, just like one was installed, 4.1 I believe is the version that was installed, it's installed once. One set of floppy disks to worry about without having to create huge file cabinets of diskettes to keep individually stored for students. Nothing is kept on diskettes, everything is kept on hard media so that the student only brings with them and takes out their paper copies, their revisions.
Okay. Thank you, Chris. Adam, back to you.
Thank you, and it's been a very informative look at our computer lab. And if any of you at home have questions about the Writer's Workbench Laboratory, we will be taking your calls right after our second presentation, and we'd like to point out that the National Honor Society will be, members of the National Honor Society will be taking your calls, so you'll be talking to them when you call in. Later, we'll flash the number on the screen. I'd like to shift our focus now to laser video discs from Optical Data Corporation. We have Mr. Jim Donatelli to inform us about this new technology and to give us a little demonstration. And to tell us about Optical Data Corporation's recent release of a social studies disc produced in conjunction with ABC News, we have Mr. Walter Belfield, Chairman of the History Department. Gentlemen, the floor is yours.
Thanks very much. I'd like to begin, Adam, by telling our viewers a little bit about optical data and laser video disc in general. Optical data was born in 1981, and at that point in time, our company realized the need to provide quality visual materials to schools in a non-traditional format. Schools are very used to using film strips, videotape, slides, and the like, but it's a very, very inconvenient, in some ways, storage medium, and there's a better way to produce visual material in schools today, and that's with laser video disc. A video disc looks like this. It's a 12-inch disc. You may see that there are similarities between it and compact discs that you have at home. A compact disc, audio compact disc, is the sister technology to this. On a video disc this size, a 12-inch video disc, we can store 108,000 individual images. Those 108,000 images can then be subdivided into slides, still images, or motion video. And in optical data, what we decided to do in the subject area of science is to start with basic concepts in science that teachers would use at the elementary and secondary levels, and then to capture the visual images to illustrate those concepts on the video disc. And so the video disc that I'm holding at this time, which is one of our Windows on Science discs for elementary schools, contains 3,000 slides and over 90 movie clips illustrating topics in elementary earth science. Optical data has produced over 22 video discs in the last 8 years, and currently we are marketing them to over 3,000 schools in this country, and over 75 schools in New Jersey are currently using optical data video discs in their programs every day. One of the things I'd like to do is to illustrate the technology to you by demonstrating it firsthand, and we'll go over to the equipment in order to do that, and just introduce you a little bit to some of the things that we have set up here. This is a video disc player, which is owned by Cherry Hill West High School. And as you saw, I had a number of video discs here. We're going to start with Earth Science today at the secondary level and illustrate how the disc can be used in a variety of different ways in the classroom. In order to load a video disc, it's very simple. This drawer will slide out. I'm not going to do it right now. It just take a little bit of extra time. But the drawer would slide out very similar to a VCR, and then the video disc will slide in, and then we can start it very, very much like a VCR. The teacher would hold a remote control unit, such as this, and the remote control unit is very similar to the remote that you would have at home for your TV or your VCR. In fact, many of the ways to use this remote control are exactly the same as changing channels on your television set. And so if we look at the video disc that we have right now on the screen, we have an Earth Science disc that contains 7,200 slides and 34 movie clips in its database. This is part of the Living Textbook collection from Optical Data. The Living Textbook is a series of video disc-based curriculum packages in science. They consist of video discs, print materials, computer software, all of the multimedia tools that a teacher would need in order to present visuals effectively in the classroom. And one of the things I'd like to do is illustrate how easily this can be done. If we look at the directory on screen, we can see that the topics on the video disc for Earth Science at the high school level are organized into chapters just like a textbook. Instead of pages of text on the textbook, we have pages of visuals, 108,000 of them that we can access within a maximum search time of 6 or 7 seconds. As you can see here, we have chapters 1 through 6, and then if I hit the step button, which just moves me forward one page, again analogous to a textbook, you'll see that we now look at pages or chapters 7 through 12. And then one more step in 13 through 18, and one more step 19 through 24, and literally an Earth Science teacher has an entire Earth Science curriculum at his or her fingertips here visually. One of the powers of video disc is that teachers have the ability to show students difficult concepts that are difficult to understand visually before they may be asked to read about them, which is conceptual, in their textbooks. And I'd like to illustrate some of those points to you. Let's say I wanted to learn more about Mount St. Helens. Mount St. Helens is located in Chapter 4 on the video disc. To get to Chapter 4, think of how you turn to Channel 4 on your television set. It's really pretty much the same. I'm going to look at my remote control, hit the chapter key, and as you can see, it flashes with Chapter 1. Well, I don't want Chapter 1, I want Chapter 4. And so what we're going to do is hit 4, and then the search button, and we go immediately to the beginning of Chapter 4. And now if I hit the step button, which is just like turning pages, we can now step through slides of Mount St. Helens. Now I'm just going to step through some of the visuals quickly so that you get an idea of the representation of slides on the video disc. This particular slide is Mount St. Helens erupting from 500 miles above the Earth, as photographed by one of our satellites. As we go through the slides, you see some really exciting shots of Mount St. Helens. And here, as you can see, the ash cloud is spreading from west to east across the country. Now, to know where I am on the video disc at any point in time, all I have to do is hit the display button. Right now on the display, you can see I'm in Chapter 4, page 1003. If I hit the step button, I can turn one page to 1004 or step back to 1003. Let's say that I wanted to move quickly to page 1050, which is 47 steps forward. I could do that very quickly by hitting the frame key, which is the same as page. So let's say I want to turn to page 1050. I just punch in 1050, one digit too many there, we'll try it again, 1050, and then search, and within just a couple of seconds I'm looking at page 1050. All of the visuals are described to the teachers in the print material that accompanies the video disc, so the teachers would be able to plan ahead of time for the material they wanted to show their class on a particular day. The random access and the ability to get to the visuals quickly and to show the visuals at very high quality are two of the things that set video disc apart from some of the other visual technologies that teachers currently have available to them. As I said in my introductory comments, the video disc is made up, in our case, of both slides and movie clips. The 7,200 slides, we've seen a small sample of them. Let's look at one of the 34 movie clips that are on this particular video disc. As you can see right now, I'm in Chapter 4. Let's go quickly to Chapter 43. To do that, again, think about how you'd turn to channel 43 on your television set by hitting Chapter, and then 43, and then Search. Let's pretend that we were studying earthquakes, and notice we've gone very quickly to page 20,360. We literally moved 19,000 pages forward on the video disc in about 4 or 5 seconds. We're now queued up to play a very short movie clip on rock deformation. Let's pretend that we were teaching earthquakes on this particular day. One of the things that science teachers try to get across to students when they're studying earthquakes is the idea that the earth stretches and bends before it finally breaks. And this movie illustrates that very well. Let's take a look at the beginning of the movie, and I'm going to do a variety of different things with it to show you how it could be used in the classroom. The first thing I'm going to do, just like you might do with a VCR, is to push play.
This material, silicone putty, can be used to illustrate how the behavior of a substance may depend on whether stress is applied rapidly or slowly. First, a large stress applied rapidly, photographed in slow motion.
Okay, here we have one of Cherry Hill West's science teachers ready to pound the silicone putty with a hammer. This would be a perfect time for the teacher to do exactly what I just did, which is to hit the still button. And notice that when you hit the still button with video disc, you get a perfect image with no distortion, just as if you were looking at a slide. As a matter of fact, every one of the individual frames of a movie clip can be viewed just as if it was an individual slide. So what I'm going to do at this point is turn the pages one at a time, and as you'll see in just a moment, the hammer is going to approach the silicone putty. Here it comes, and we'll stop right there. At this point, the teacher might ask the class, well, what do you think is going to happen to the silicone putty? And of course, the class will laugh because everybody knows what's going to happen to it at this point in time. It's going to smash. But it gives the opportunity to the teacher to ask a leading question, get some responses, and then test those responses against what actually is going to happen. What I'm going to do is take those numbers off so they're not distracting to us by hitting the display key again, and then let's test our hypothesis to see if it does in fact smash by hitting play. And to nobody's surprise, the silicone putty is destroyed. Let's freeze it once again, hold it on still, and now let's put Humpty Dumpty back together again by going backwards in slow motion. We can go backwards quickly, we can go backwards slowly. As you can see, we can freeze the gentleman right there, and then if we'd like to, start this sequence all over again. But let's look at it a different way this time.
Photographed in slow motion.
Let's freeze it right there, and let's bring the hammer down one more time, freeze it right there, and now ask the students that if we could slow this down and play this next sequence one little frame at a time, just the way I did earlier, what do you think would happen with the silicone putty? Well, let's test out the hypothesis. Let's turn the page by hitting the step button. Let's turn the page one more time, and yet one more time. Let's back up to keep everybody in suspense, and then move it back down again. And now a teacher is able to illustrate visually to the students the concept that material, in many cases, stretches before it finally breaks, and this is analogous to exactly what happens in an earthquake. And so before a student has to read about this, or particularly students who have difficulty in reading the textbook, can see the material visually first and thus have a greater understanding and a greater comprehension of the concepts that the teacher is trying to put forward. And we can go forward with here and see the rest of the movie clip, but it would take another 2 minutes or so, and I want to show you some of the other things that we can do here as well. This is a secondary level video disc, and what I'd like to do at this point in time is to eject this particular disc and put in an elementary disc so that those of you who might work with elementary schools in our viewing audience tonight or have children who are in elementary schools can see exactly what could be done at that level as well. What we're going to do is we're going to stick with the topic of earth science and look at what could be done with earth science at the elementary level. We'll put the disc in the player. As you can see, it's very much like a VCR. We're going to push play. The disc actually starts spinning on the inside of the player, just like your compact disc spins on the inside of its player at home. And we're going to see a little short 20-minute musical introduction to this disc, which sort of gets the class in the right mood. In elementary schools today, one of the primary ways to teach science is through the use of a textbook. Through the use of a textbook, students will comprehend, or through hands-on experiences, a certain amount of material. But again, many students at the elementary level are visual learners. They need to see material visually before they are able to understand the concepts that are being presented. This is a video disc curriculum package called Windows on Science for elementary science. It contains a video disc, which is in the player at this present time, lesson plans prepared for the teacher, and directories so that teachers can find the material very, very quickly, as well as hands-on activities for those teachers who might like to do hands-on work to follow up with the video disc itself. If we look at the menu for our video disc on elementary earth science, we can see that one topic that is universally taught by teachers at the elementary unit is weather. And that's one topic that teachers are very, very familiar with. What we're going to do here is take a look at the weather unit and how we might approach the topic of weather in a visual format. So let's pretend that we are in a 4th, 5th, or 6th grade class today, and we're going to study weather, but we're going to do it in a little bit of a different way than might be typical in many schools today. To get to our weather unit, again, you can see we're organized just like a textbook, and we're going to go to Chapter 2. So on my remote, again, thinking of how we turn a channel 2 on a TV set, we hit the chapter key, the number 2, the search button, and we're presented with a submenu that tells me just to turn the page if I want to get into the lesson. So I'm going to turn the page by hitting the step key, and I have my title frame, Air and Weather. As a former elementary teacher, what I'm going to do is go through this as I might teach the class myself for the next minute or so. Today, elementary school teachers are very good at storytelling, so I'm going to tell a little bit of a story to illustrate this particular topic, and this is a true story. The scene that you see here on the screen is Minneapolis, Minnesota. It's July 18th, 1985, and it's about 4:50 in the afternoon. The lesson plan that comes with this material would tell the teacher what I just told you. The teacher could read the lesson plan word for word or paraphrase it as I just did. Then the lesson plan would indicate to the teacher to turn the page. To turn the page on the video, all we have to do is press the step key, and now we're looking at these two gentlemen. This is photographer Tom Empey and helicopter pilot Max Messmer do an afternoon radio broadcast for a radio station in Minneapolis to report on the traffic. We'll turn the page. As you can see, they're now airborne over Minneapolis on this hot, humid summer afternoon, July of 1985. But as they begin their traffic report, they cite a very unusual occurrence that they don't normally find, and that is a tornado.
The tornado began as a long, twisting and looping swirl of wind reaching down from the clouds above. A short while later, it developed into a straighter, more compact funnel cloud, the more familiar tornado shape we recognize. Usually, tornadoes last only a few minutes, but this tornado lasted almost a half hour. Listen as pilot Max Messmer speaks live with a reporter at the news desk in the TV station. The reporter asks Max several questions, but we can only hear Max's voice as he replies.
Let's freeze the video right there, and then let's say the teacher wanted to step forward further into this particular movie clip rather than listening to the rest of the narration. I know most of you maybe want to see the rest of the tornado, but unfortunately time doesn't allow us to see the whole thing. But this particular video certainly captures the imagination and the attention of the students. And if we go a little further, we can draw an analogy of how a tornado actually has its effect on the land around it. We're going to go quickly to frame 5000 or page 5000 on the video disc. What we're seeing here is the action of the tornado as it acts as a giant vacuum cleaner on the ground around it. We're frozen right now on frame 5000 or page 5000 on our video disc. But let me put it into play and we'll watch how this works.
In for a closer look as the twister reforms over this field. Notice how it acts as a giant vacuum cleaner, picking up everything in reach.
What I'm going to do is freeze it right there, and then as I put it into play, listen to the narration very carefully.
Los tornados son muy imprevisibles. Un tornado no se mueve solo en trayectoria recta, sino que se retuerce y brinca.
For our Spanish-speaking friends in the audience tonight, you can see that the narration on a video disc can be in more than one language, because many of the students that teachers have to work with each day may speak Spanish in our schools today. Then it is helpful for the teachers to have the narration for the movie clips in English as well as Spanish, and the ability to switch from one language to another quickly during a lesson, or to play it once in English and then to play it again in Spanish. One of the things I'd like to do here is illustrate how students can understand vocabulary in science, which can very often be a roadblock to understanding. One of the things having to do with weather, of course, is the study of clouds and cloud types. And I'm sure all of us at one time or another have learned about cloud types. Let's take a look in our visual glossary at a cloud type at this point in time. We're on right now page 5650. Let's go to page 15125. To do that, I hit my page key called frame and put 15125. Just punch the numbers in just like you were turning channels on your TV set, and hit the search button. We're going to go about 10,000 pages forward, and as you can see, we're there. And by taking the display off, you can see that we have cumulus written on the blackboard. Now, if the student came to cumulus in their textbook and they didn't understand the word, most textbooks would have the word in boldface type and then out in the margin so that the student would be able to see the definition. But a student who never had a cumulus cloud pointed out to them still doesn't understand what a cumulus cloud looks like. So just by turning the page, we can show the student what the cumulus cloud looks like before we go to the definition of the cloud. Or then we could go back to the picture before we go to the more abstract form, which is the definition in words. We've tried to create these lessons like good reading lessons in keeping with good pedagogy. Teachers like to see the word used in context. So here's an example of how the word cumulus can be used in a sentence. And finally, for our Spanish-speaking and reading friends, the word cumulus in Spanish as well. I'll just go through quickly the visual glossary, and you can see that we have a variety of different words that are illustrated all by photographs, diagrams, or different graphics. And there are 400 different terms that are illustrated this way on this particular video disc. The point to be made here is the whole idea of visual learning. Students being able to see material for difficult concepts or simple concepts before they have to read about it in their textbook and thus have greater understanding. One of the things that we're very pleased about at Optical Data is our new relationship with ABC News. ABC News and Optical Data have agreed to produce video discs over the next several years in the area of social studies and health topics. The first video disc that has been created by the two companies is called the 88 Vote, and it's based upon our recently completed electoral process for the presidency of the United States. And what I'd like to do is move over to our other machine here so that we can take a look at the 88 Vote on this video disc player. We have side one of the 88 Vote in at this point in time. You can see our title screen up on the computer, the video monitor. We're going to operate the 88 Vote first the same way that I operated with the other video disc that we just finished looking at. What we want to do first is take a look at a little introduction, and the introduction is given by ABC News anchor Peter Jennings. So let's take a look first at what Peter has to say about just introducing the candidates in this particular election. The candidate introduction takes place on Chapter 2, so again we're going to do the same kind of thing, turn to Chapter 2 by hitting Chapter, the number 2, the search button, and now let's listen to Peter.
The campaign for the presidency begins when the candidate announces his or her intention to run, tossing their hat in the ring, as we say.
I seek the presidency.
I declare my candidacy.
In the 1988 campaign, 7 Democrats ran,
I think it's a mistake to
debating the issues, each trying to put his ideas out ahead of the others. They entered a series of grueling state primaries and party caucuses.
Peter continues for about another minute or so going through an introduction to this side of the video disc. So as a student, I could sit down and pick and choose the topics that I wish to learn about on a given day by going through the print directory that comes with every video disc. The print directory lists all of the available slides and movie clips that I might choose to look at in order to study about the '88 vote, from the Democratic candidates, Republican candidates, the 2 conventions, snapshots using slides of all of the different delegates, and the number of delegates from different states, and so forth. So if I wanted to see the convention delegates and electoral votes for New Jersey, for example, that's available to me on page 49,752. So let's go to page 49,752 at this point in time. Frame 49,752, turning to that page and searching. And now we've just gone about 47,000 frames forward on the video disc to take a snapshot of New Jersey, the number of Republican delegates, Democratic delegates, and electoral votes that were in place on Election Day. There's a number of different things that we can do, and we also, of course, can use this device to have a teacher present the material to an entire class. One of the things about video disc is that it lends itself very well to teacher applications and also to student applications. One student working with the material, or a teacher, as I am standing in front of you, working with the material with an entire class. Let's take a look, for example, at Bruce Babbitt announcing for the presidency. That's on page 4,557. So I search to frame 4557, hit my search button, and here is our setup screen and play.
Well, I know there's a lot of suspense here this morning. I must tell you that I am ready.
Or we could freeze and very quickly go to George Bush's announcement for the presidency, page 23,288. Teacher has the ability then to make choices very quickly on his or her feet, or to have the choices spelled out for him or her ahead of time.
This is a great day for me, a deeply important one. And when I thought about what we're to say, what I'm about to say, there was really only one choice where to say it. I had to come here.
Peter Jennings is available at various times during the program in order to introduce different sections of the video disc. Let's look at Peter introducing the Democratic National Convention. To do that, we're going to go to page 25,509. So I'll hit my frame button, 25,509, and search. And
When the
play.
primary season ended, each political party held its national convention. In July, thousands of Democratic delegates and party leaders met in Atlanta to officially select their party's presidential and vice presidential nominees and to draft the party's platform.
Now, we Democrats believe that America is still the country of fair play.
The Democrats hope for a unified.
And we could see Peter introduce the Republican convention in the same way. So he is available at different times during the video, on the video disc, so that students can select Peter for a particular perspective on the electoral process and the actual happenings during the election. There is also a different means of controlling the video disc other than the remote control unit that we've been using up to this point in time, and that is to link the video disc to a computer. What I'd like to do is use this video disc and link it to the computer that you see here, which is an Apple Macintosh computer, and control what visuals we see from the computer. We're going to flip over and go to side 2 of the 88 vote, put our video disc in play, and I'm going to take a look at the visuals as if I was a student wanting to go through the material on the disc. What I have at this point in time is a screen in front of me on the Macintosh, and the screen in front of me tells me the options that are available to me. And then on the video screen, we're going to be able to see the options that we select. I'm going to use the mouse with the Macintosh computer in order to make the selections of what I would like to view. So let's say that I would like to see Peter introduce side 2 of the video disc. I would take the mouse and point to that particular button on the Macintosh screen, and then click the mouse. A signal is sent to the video displayer.
Hello, I'm Peter Jennings, and welcome to side 2 of the 88 vote, an interactive video disc on the 1988 campaign for the White House. This side of the disc focuses on the period following the national conventions.
Mr. Bush is coasting and we're fighting.
Just as I did with the remote control unit, it is also possible to stop the video disc at any point in time by using the computer and to make an alternate selection. So let's stop at that point, go back to our menu, and see some of the issues: speeches, debates, advertising, and then finally go to the results of the election. Let's say that we would like to study a little bit about the issues. We click on the Issues button and come to a variety of different issues. Perhaps we'd like to see Dan Quayle as an issue. We can click on Dan Quayle's name, and now we can see the vice presidential debate clip, which has become famous at this point in time, or the Dukakis TV commercial portraying Dan Quayle. Or we could see a point-counterpoint debate. Let's click point-counterpoint, and at this point, what I could do is I could hear the actual narration, or I could hear analysis by ABC's political commentator, Hal Bruno. Let's hear actual sound.
This election that we face represents a choice between two very different kinds of leadership and two very different visions of America. George Bush thinks Dan Quayle belongs one heartbeat away from the leadership of the free world.
And again, let's freeze it at that point in time. One of the things that a teacher is able to do with a computer is plan the selections that he or she wishes the students to view ahead of time, the order in which those selections are to be viewed, or the order in which those selections are to be shown to a class together. So again, the student could control the video disc through the use of the computer, or the teacher could control the video disc. Let's go back to the menu, and this time choose the button that is labeled Documentary Maker. Documentary Maker could also be named Lesson Maker. Lesson Maker or Documentary Maker means that we can create a lesson on the video disc. And one of the lessons that we've created is called the lineup, and the lineup that we're going to look at, we've named Debate. I think all of us may remember the vice presidential debate, and at this point in time, I've chosen, ahead of the show, 2 particular clips for you to view. And let's, again, look at a situation where a teacher may have set up these 2 clips ahead of time to illustrate a particular point. And what we're going to do is show the clips one after another by clicking automatic playback of the selected visuals.
I have far more experience than many others that sought the office of Vice President of this country. I have as much experience in the Congress as Jack Kennedy did when he sought the presidency.
Senator, I served with Jack Kennedy. I knew Jack Kennedy. Jack Kennedy was a friend of mine. Senator, you're no Jack Kennedy.
So a teacher is able to take the video clips that are available to him or her on the video disc itself, edit those clips, make them as long or short as the teacher might like to do, and then to play them back to the students in any particular order. These lineups can then be saved and replayed over and over and over again. They can be changed and edited. We could have one lineup for one set of students and another lineup for a different set of students. And that's the ability that is present when we can connect a computer to a video disc player. In short, video discs are catching on very, very quickly in schools today. Optical Data currently has over 3,500 schools in the country using our video discs every day, and an increasing number. I want to thank you very much, Adam, for the opportunity to show you the materials tonight.
Okay, thank you very much. And I believe now, Mr. Belfield, you would like to make a few comments.
Maybe a couple of questions. Certainly impressed with all this technological business. Mrs. Obreza, terrific job. Chris, terrific. Jim, terrific. If we can get us all together here and have an interdisciplinary kind of program, it might be helpful. Maybe the history department can use your program or get involved. Really exciting. Look forward to trying to use something like this. Maybe a couple of questions, Jim. Cost is on the minds of an awful lot of people.
I'm sure.
Declining enrollments and escalating budgets, that sort of thing. What are we looking at with this equipment you've just demonstrated, cost-wise?
Let's start with the hardware first, and then maybe look at the courseware that would go along with it. The players that you saw me use, the video disc players, the first video disc player that I used where I was using the remote control, a Pioneer model video disc player, it sells for about $695, a little bit more than the cost of a good VCR. The courseware, the video disc that I was using in both cases, the elementary and the secondary science, are both $495 products. And so for just a little over $1,000, that particular setup that I was using a TV that the school probably already has in its possession, that particular program could be used. When you go to linking a video disc player with a computer, you have to be first cognizant of what computers you want to link to. And that really determines the model of video disc player that you might want to purchase. But in any case, your hardware costs, exclusive of the monitor, generally won't run any higher than about $1,100. So $695 to $1,100 for the hardware, and several $100s in a range from $195 actually to $495 would be the cost of most of the educational video discs on the market today.
How critical is the computer, and how does that add to the whole program? I mean, is that a necessary thing, or is it a luxury, or is it?
It's neither necessary nor a luxury, really. In terms of the computer use, you saw me use the remote control for the video disc player through most of my presentation. And that's the way 80% of our customers start using our material. Very often, it's very easy for the teacher to get going with this technology if they use the remote, because it's very simple to use and it's very familiar to them because it's like a TV remote or a VCR remote that they already have. Then generally, in the second or third year of implementation, teachers then start to work with some of the computer applications once they are completely comfortable with the contents of the disk and how they might use it with classes. It also, I think, is helpful to point out that the remote control is useful for presentations to an entire class, whereas the computer application is probably better if a student is going to sit down one-on-one with the material.
Yeah. How do you respond to the traditionalist who says all this machinery is really unnecessary in the classroom and buy them a book and that's sufficient?
I think we'd have to go back and look at how students learn material and how students are expected to learn concepts and content that are presented in science and social studies. Many students just have difficulty conceptualizing the content that they're being asked to master or the skills that they're being asked to master simply by reading about them. Something about reading levels usually is involved, vocabulary is usually involved, and it's pretty well known that students will comprehend material better if they see it first and then have to read about it.
Now, this video that you showed us is current events, essentially. Much of our program deals with history. We go back to the Greeks, the Romans, and early American history. How available is material like that, and is it on the market in discs, or will it be? Or?
Right now, there is not a plethora of social studies material available as we speak tonight. However, ABC News and Optical Data intend to produce 5 to 10 video discs in social studies and health each year for the next 3 years. And so after 1 year of time, for example, we expect to accumulate a critical mass of products that will then, I think, be very enticing to social studies educators, health educators around the country.
Mrs. Abreza and I have been discussing the possibility of inaugurating a humanities course here. And we're very much in need of an intermix, music, art, and things like that. Is that possible? Is that in the works or available?
It's certainly possible. There are video discs at this point in time that are available in art and the humanities, not from Optical Data, but certainly there are video discs that you could buy in those areas as well.
I mean, obviously, the principle of being able to hold a frame of a picture or use audio for music and the rest would be terrific in a humanities course. The application is just terrific, I think. Yeah.
One of the things that we'd also like to point out to our viewers is that video discs are also available in the consumer market for entertainment. When we started the show, you saw on the roll-up Pulling G's, which is a takeoff on the movie Top Gun, which many of you may have seen on high-performance aircraft. Currently, the consumer market for video discs in the United States is relatively small. However, the viewers should be aware that in Japan, for example, there are more video disc players in homes than there are VCRs. Video disc players outsell VCRs in Japan by 2 to 1. And so there is a large market in Japan for consumer video discs and a growing market in the States for computers, for video disc for use in the consumer home market. Virtually any movie, any first-run movie which is now produced is also available on 12-inch video disc as well as on videotape.
Thanks, Jim.
You're welcome.
Very
Thank
interesting.
you.
Very interesting.
All right, thank you both, gentlemen. Now we'd like to take advantage of what a live show can do. We'd like you to call in now. The number is flashed right there on your screen, 663-6487. Answering our phones tonight will be members of the National Honor Society. I'd like to give them special recognition. I believe Jay Kaufman is over there, treasurer of the National Honor Society. Rachel Coopersmith is also over there. She's secretary of the National Honor Society, and also Elise Rabinowitz. Okay. So call in. I know many people have called in, other shows and perhaps have not gotten through. Believe me, you will get through. All right, we have our first ring, but before we get to the first question, because it'll take some time for it to get over, I'd like to ask a question to Mrs. Obreza first.
All right, Ed.
When I was working with working with the Writers' Workbench myself, and I was looking at all these numbers, and most of them were where there should be. There was one, I think, was a type token ratio. I think it was called. It's not really important which one it is that was off. And then when I was revising, I was thinking more in terms of beating the numbers, trying to get in the right numbers.
Okay.
Do you think that, I know this is not the intent to beat the numbers, do you think that students will try to get the numbers right to a point where it's going to change their style? Is this, how do you respond
okay, that's
to
a good
something
question. It depends. I mean, the examples that I gave were of students who were trying to also beat the numbers. There is one student in our class whose average sentence length, I'll go back to that, exceeds the average, and I would constantly tell him not to change. He has a very, very mature style. So I think that what you have to recognize with this program is that the student is the decision maker, and not in all cases is it advisable to follow the prescription. I mean, he still has to make judgments. A good example of that would be in a piece of writing, you might have a variety of complex sentences, compound sentences, and then at one point, you might want a short, simple sentence for effect. So you would have to know what you're doing with the language at that point and reject the advice of the program.
And to follow up on that point, I think it's important to understand that what you did was you recognized objective feedback and you made a cognitive decision. You thought about your writing, and that's extremely important. The program encourages students to think about their writing. And that's, rather than being a rote exercise or, what I did on my summer vacation, writing becomes something to be thought about, tailored, and crafted. And that's the intention of all English teachers when they bring writing into the curriculum.
All right, the calls are coming right now. I believe we have some questions. If I could just to follow up, I guess, you talked about the role of the teacher shifting.
Right.
You don't have to worry about grammar. I don't know, I guess maybe in our class, you really don't have to worry about a lot of spelling errors and stuff. So what has this done for you? Now you don't have to worry about any of these things. What are you focusing on now with all this time?
Okay, I don't know that the focus should be on me necessarily. I think that many people think of writing in terms of spelling, grammar, punctuation, mechanics, and those things are important because you can't communicate if you're not using the common standard rules. But too often, writing instruction and writing revision for the student has been a matter of correcting the spelling errors, and what this program will allow us to do is to put those concerns in the context of the entire composing process. It is just as important, perhaps even more important, to work on the logic of the argument, the appropriateness of the textual support, whether the paper comes to a conclusion or not. Those things ultimately are the important things in writing.
And again, to follow up, the value of the program pointing out grammar and grammar, spelling, rather mechanical issues can also be used in the younger grades. In the 7th and the 8th grades, I've seen it used actually as a reinforcing tool. This is a grammatical point. You need a subordinate clause here, and the program can help reinforce that teaching point for the younger grades. So depending on the creativity of the teacher, the program can be used to reinforce grammar and spelling, not just relieve the teacher of it.
All right, we have a question.
All right, Adam, we have two questions that I would like to address myself to. The first one, which I think is a very good question, I would have asked it myself. How much access will students here at West have to Writer's Workbench? And as I said earlier in the program, the Writer's Workbench was completely installed as of last week. I mean, it is operational. The first step for us at West is to teach the teachers how to use the system. To that end, the teachers in the English department have had one in service, and they will have another. After that is completed, which is going to be in 2 weeks, then all students whose teachers elect to, at this point in the year, to use the facility will have that access. Obviously, in the fall, we should be fully operational. The second question, do the teachers on the panel, I am the teacher on the panel who has access to the program, do the teachers on the panel ever use the program when grading papers? The answer to that is no. The program is for the student. The feedback is for the student. The teacher may require that the prescription for revision be submitted with the final draft, but in order to see whether the student has, in effect, followed the advice or not. But essentially, the prescription for revision is for the student. The final paper that he turns into the teacher will be a result of the benefit that he's gained from using that prescription. So that, no, it is not a grading tool for the teachers. Okay, they're the only two questions I have at this point.
Do we have any more questions? Okay, we do have questions.
A couple right here, Adam.
Okay.
One of them was, do the video discs come with materials for students to take home to study? Jim?
The Windows on Science program for elementary school has materials, worksheets, and activities that the teacher can assign to be done at home study activities. And also for the living textbook at the secondary level, there are activities that could be pursued at home as well, which would not necessarily require that the student have the video disc at home or the video disc player.
One of the other questions is, do you see the video disc eliminating the use of textbooks? And I would say absolutely not. Certainly as a as a supplement to that, and a valid supplement, but not a replacement.
I certainly concur with that as well. The video disc, as we produced it and as we structure our curriculum materials, was not designed to replace textbooks or replace teachers, for that matter. We see the video disc working in harmony with the textbook. The video disc can provide visuals that the textbook cannot. The textbook can provide the text material and the content that the video disc cannot. The two in harmony work very, very nicely because the two in harmony feed off the benefits of the technology of video disc, and also the fact that the textbooks are an important part of the curriculum as well.
And the third question here is, will the video discs be open to student use? And I would say certainly yes, and we would encourage the use of them, have students designing their own projects and video projects, if you will. And certainly open to student use if we acquired them.
All right, we have some more questions over here. It's about the Writer's Workbench. Is the Writer's Workbench program a word processor or just an aid? I guess they're asking whether, I guess, you could print it out and use it as a word processor or whatever.
We have installed WordPerfect on the Unix system, and so the program can be used as a word processor, and you can go right to a draft without going through the analysis that the software provides. But that really isn't taking full advantage of what the system offers. But we have the capacity to do that, yes.
But so, in other words, that if a student took the time to go in there to do it, then he could simply revise it there and not go home and type it over again.
Oh, right.
Which would save him time.
Absolutely.
Okay.
In addition to that, at some point we should bring up the fact that the system is connected to a modem, and we expect that students who have IBM-compatible computers would be able to access the system from home, which of course makes this a tremendous advantage to the community. There are, however, some restrictions. One, in order to have access to the system, he would have to have a user ID. He would also have to have a password, so he would have to get that from the system administrator, who is me. And he then would also have to have a terminal emulator at home. So that's really will not be immediately available to the student, but ultimately that will be available to the student, and we do have the capacity right now.
All right, and the other question we have here is for Mr. Donatelli. It says, is the Laserdisc available to the students now, or will it be later? Will happen later?
In terms of the video disc use for students at this point in time, I'm not familiar with exactly how the video discs that are in place at Cherry Hill West are being used. However, certainly the programs were designed that they could be used for students and with students, as well as teachers presenting the material to entire classes at the same time.
Excuse me.
All right, it's all right. I just wanted, as far as the use that I know of, they have, we have some video discs that give some background on certain colleges. So I know I've gone into the library, and I think that's all we have so far. Is that right, Mr. Belfield?
I'm certainly speaking for the history department. We don't have it in the history department yet, but it is in the library for student use at any time.
Okay. And I believe that's all the time we have tonight for questions. I'd like to thank all of you for tuning in and watching. Those of you who called in, we thank you very much. We'd like to thank the panel. Chris Morley of AT&T, thank you very much for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Mrs. Obriza of the English department, thank you very much.
Thank you, Adam.
Mr. Belfield.
Thanks, Adam.
And Mr. Donatelli, thank you very much. We know this. You had to come here out of your schedules, and we thank you for taking the time to come and talk with us, share your expertise. We'd like to thank our camera crew, Chris Zimzak, Andrew Yazger, David Hawes, Andy Katz working the sound in the back. We'd like to thank our National Honor Society who answered the phones, Jay Kaufman, Elise Rabinowitz, and Rachel Coopersmith. We'd like to also thank our coordinators and technical directors, Mr. Gordon Hansen and Mr. Alan Hawes, who without any of this, without them, none of this could be possible. And since no one else can do it, I guess I'll thank myself for hosting this extravaganza. And we thank you for tuning in to Cable 18, and we wish you a pleasant evening. Good night.